Okay, we have sound. Okay, I'd like to thank Mike for inviting me back. I spoke here about 4 years ago, and I've changed it a lot in a 4-year period. A little background, I formed my corporation back in 1991 with the specific understanding that weather and climate occurs in cycles. I've researched climate cycles for 25 years, and I've made climate models. And I've developed what is called the natural climate pulse, the Earth's natural climate pulse. It's controlled by the primary forcing mechanism for climate cycles. And I use the natural climate pulse in my hurricane predictions that I put out. I predict hurricane landfalls 4 years in advance. I'm getting a little feedback over on this side. I predict hurricane landfalls up to 4 years in advance by using my technology. I predicted Hurricane Sandy 3 years before it struck. I predicted Hurricane Irene the year before, 2 years before it struck. So my technology is very, very, very good. And that's what I specialize in, hurricane landfalls. So a spin-off on it is climate cycles. I have written I have an ebook online that you can get called The Earth's Natural Climate Pulse, updated last year in 2012. This presentation is an update of the ebook. And I'm a former co-host of the radio talk show, The Politically Incorrect Weather Guy, which means I cut through the politics. No politics involved. I want to make it perfectly straight. I'm not funded by any energy companies. I do not receive grants from any governments. Everything I do is just straight across the board. Unlike universities, which are funded by the federal government. And just 2 weeks ago, politics of Maine got involved, where I had a talk scheduled up north, and it was canceled a couple days before my talk due to politics. There was a political force that got my talk canceled. So now you're going to see what they were going to see. I have a lot of information. You're going to be given about a 2-semester course in about 50 minutes to 1 hour. We're going to go through where carbon dioxide comes from, the cycles of carbon dioxide and temperature, how we got into this political mess, and then in the last section we'll be talking about the likely cause of climate change and our prediction for sea level rises or falls during the next 100 years. Well, the last 3 winters, there's been all kinds of major storms. You've had a lot of snow up here. Been a lot of storms around the world, a lot of cold weather, and there's been some open seasons also. But global warming is real. It is real. Because we've also had record-breaking heat. So what we're seeing right now is, it's like during the spring, we see a lot of tornadoes in the Midwest. That's a fight between winter weather and summer weather. The weather patterns are fighting. Right now we're seeing a fight between global cooling and global warming. Which one's going to take over? Now the big issue is carbon dioxide. This graphic goes from 1850 up until present. Orange line is the rise in carbon dioxide. And this is common knowledge, and we all agree, yes, carbon dioxide has increased during the past 150 years. No doubt about it. However, some people will say since 1850, 80% of the rise in carbon dioxide is humans burning fossil fuels. 80% of the rise. You think that's right? Is that true? We're going to investigate that. And also, on the scale, right here is 300 parts per million. They do it in parts per million. Parts per million is like you take a piece of air, and the piece of air has 1 million parts in it, of elements, 1 million parts. And we're going to go into that a little bit more. Of that 1 million parts, there's only 300 parts of it is carbon dioxide. Right now, we're up to just about 400 parts per million. But 300 parts per million, when we crossed that threshold right here, the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change by the United Nations, said we've never been above 300 parts per million before in the past couple million years. Never, they said, never. And we're up to 400 parts per million right now. So we're going to take a look at this. And I put a red flag on it, because we're really going to look at this. Perfect example here. Here is a graphic by United Nations, the IPCC. What they did, Mike talked about it, computer models, only as good as what you put into it. This graphic goes back to 1950, and it's important also they stopped at 1950. We'll get into that, why they stopped at 1950. The black is the temperatures up to the year 2006. So what they did was they computed their computer runs, models, based on carbon dioxide increases. And the dark red line means that the temperature fell 75% of the time within that dark red area, 95% of the time within the lighter red area. Then they put out their forecast in 2006, and actually they amended their forecast about 4 times since then. But they put out the forecast, what they wanted to say is 75% confidence that temperatures would continue rising like that. 95% confidence it would at least stay in that boundary. And this is what's happening. That's what's happening right now. It is falling out of at 95%, which means they're 95% wrong. Actually, 100% wrong. So I've red flagged this. We're going to take a look at why this is. Okay, this is, okay, they only went back to 1950 on this. Now I'll show you why they only went back to 1950. This is present day right now. That's a 10-year warm spike in temperatures. This is 1930s 10-year spike in the air temperatures. They didn't want you to see the temperatures back in the 1930s. This is the normal cycles in global warming, where we have a cycle now. Why is this coming? We have the cycle, the global warming cycle now. It's 2. See, let me go to the next slide here. I think I got the slides back. No, I didn't. I was missing the slide here. Okay, somehow I rearranged it. But this is normal. This is 1930 and now. A normal global warming cycle has 2 very warm 10-year spikes. One we just went through the past 10 years, and one's in 1930, a 10-year spike. Actually, the 1930s were warmer than now. That was the Dust Bowl. So it's not even shown properly in the graphics because they kind of massage it a little bit. That's a normal global warming cycle. These come every 230 years, 1700s. There's the Twin Peaks, 1500s, 1300s, back in the 1100s, and back 850 AD, 900 AD. I red flagged this because if you notice, back 1,000, 1,200 years ago, it was warmer than today. That's when the Vikings settled Greenland. It was warmer than today. And they don't want you to know about that. Now, on the cycles, the 230-year cycles that I just showed you, had 6 during the past 1,200 years. That's like me taking an afternoon nap. Yes, they put about a half hour just to rejuvenate. The Earth needs it. And we'll be showing you the longer cycles every 116,000 years, where it's warm every 116,000 years, and we're actually right at the warm period now. That's like us getting a good night's sleep. The Earth needs a good night's sleep. And that's why we have very warm periods every 116,000 years, and then glacial periods for 40,000 years. Your rest and sleep. I've red flagged this whole page because since 1995, we wanted to show you about the manipulation of the university grant system. This will be denied by a lot of people at universities. Two former heads of earth science divisions at universities, leading universities, told me this. It is true. When they apply for grants, and the science departments live from grants, they need grants. When they apply for grants, the grants are usually worded that the outcome you have to show is a connection that human activity is causing global warming. That's the only way they could get grants for about a 15-year period. Because of that, that's the only information that newspapers received from the publishment and research papers. Well, that would hype up the newspapers, so they would play it up, and then that would hype up the government, so the government would issue more grants. So it was a round robin on everyone hyping up each other. And it's also important that 90% of the scientists that are receiving grants to study global warming, 90% of the scientists receiving federal grants for climate change say man is causing global warming. Whereas 85% of the general meteorologists that aren't getting paid for that say no, it's mostly natural. So research scientists know which side the bread is buttered on. And all this manipulation manipulated the energy companies. They have to be politically correct. So now, let's take a hard look at the atmospheric gases, and we're going to really dig into carbon dioxide, see what's going on. Because carbon dioxide is really the whole issue of the whole climate change issue. Earth's atmosphere. 99% of the atmosphere is made up of nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. That's 95%. 95%, 99%. So that leaves 1%. 1% is what we call the greenhouse gas, only 1% of the whole atmosphere. Of that 1%, just about 1% of it is water vapor. Carbon dioxide is way down here. You can't even see it on the graphic. So let's look just at the greenhouse gases so we can get a better look at the water vapor versus carbon dioxide. Here's water vapor, 96% of the greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide is 1.6 to 4%. Gets up to 4% during our warm periods every 116,000 years, down to 1.6% during glacial periods. Man-made greenhouse gas, 0.16% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's all it is. That's all it is. Now we're going to talk about this in parts per million because the percentages are so low, we need to talk parts per million. It's a bigger number. This is what scientists like to talk about. Greenhouse gas is 10,000 parts per million. That's water vapor for a greenhouse. 10,000 parts per million. Carbon dioxide is 160 to 400 parts per million, very low. Our fossil fuels, man-made global warming, 7 parts per million. That's all it is. 7 parts per million. Human activity. Now here's carbon dioxide, as I said. During glacial periods, it's way down to 160 parts per million. We'll be getting into this